Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "Spiteful Neighbor Signed Me Up for a Nightmare HOA by Faking My Signature. I sued them." I always thought that there were bro codes or something among close guy friends, but apparently my ex-best friend and neighbor did not get that memo. I lived in a neighborhood with some smaller homes, but they were located in a nice area that suited a social single guy like myself. The place was perfect, lots of bars and restaurants, and it was close to my work. Not to mention, my next door neighbor Andrew turned out to be the same age as me and had the same interests. We hit it off immediately and started hanging out together, and he and I would have get-togethers with friends, drinking beers and cooking out, that type of stuff. That was until one of our mutual friends, Rachel, became a love interest for both of us. Me and Andrew had been pretty close friends for over a year, and I was surprised to find out that he liked Rachel, especially when she and I had been seeing each other for a few weeks before he said anything. Andrew's behavior changed and he stopped coming over every day and was not answering my texts. Eventually, he told me why and asked me to leave him alone for a while. I was disappointed that he was upset, but I gave him his space. Meanwhile, the entire time that I've lived in this neighborhood, I've been dealing with this one HOA board member and her harassment. You see, I actually don't belong to the HOA because I was fortunate enough to actually have a seller that also did not sign on for them to dictate his every move. As a matter of fact, I was warned by the seller at our closing on the house that I needed to watch out for her and the HOA. He said that they were snakes that would do anything to conform the entire neighborhood to their stupid rules and jurisdiction. Honestly, I thought he was a little weird and maybe crazy at the time, but I immediately understood what he meant when I moved in. In the first week, the crazy lady, let's call her Angie, started in on me with the HOA business. She started off sweet, kindly asking me to sign the HOA agreement like a Girl Scout troop selling me cookies. When I politely refused, that is when her eyes went wide and scary and she slowly demanded that I signed them. She said that I was one of the last ones that was interfering with everything. When Angie came back week after week, I would, again, tell her that I didn't want to be part of the HOA and to leave me alone. She did not want to take no for an answer and continued to badger me, and eventually that turned into her trying to push me around by sending me fines away. Anytime I would have a few friends over grilling out, I would have a letter in the mail the next day stating that I had violated their rules. Leaving my car in the driveway and not in the garage was a problem, or having my grass more than 2 inches tall was a crime. The color of my damn curtains was even mentioned in a letter. I fought their BS and their threats for 6 months when finally their letters changed. All of a sudden they were stating that I was now part of the HOA and that I was under their jurisdiction. A mountain of fines came in a thick folder, nearly adding up to $5,000. When I called them on this, they were smug and rude, stating that I had indeed signed papers and sent them in. Specifically when asked, they said this was late last week. I definitely never received any papers signed or anything, or mailed a single letter in their direction. I demanded that they email a copy of the signed documents. I immediately went to work on finding a lawyer that was willing to help me on short notice with this issue, which to my surprise was a tall order because lawyers don't like to deal with HOAs apparently. Upon receiving the mail with the signed papers, I realized right away that the signature was not mine. It was certainly my name, but it was not my penmanship. The lawyer looked over everything and decided that I had a fraud case against someone, but unfortunately not the HOA. However, I was not liable for paying their fines because I didn't sign the papers. The HOA queen was super pissed, but she had to back down for now. I had installed cameras a few months prior because I was sick of seeing the HOA lady snooping around my property, trying to catch me doing something so she could send me more ridiculous fines. I assumed that it was her that forged my signature, but how would she know what it looked like? That is when I figured, well, if they said they mailed them to me, then there must have been someone who took them out of my mailbox. I went back through the video recordings of last week around when the documents should have arrived. That is when I finally saw it. It was Andrew. He had taken my documents out of the mail and back into his house. He did it smoothly enough that it was hard to see if he was getting his mail or mine, but if you slowed it down, it was plain as day. I marched over to Andrew's house and started banging on the door. I figured he'd had enough space at this point. Andrew's face was shocked at first and quickly turned to anger, stating that I did not have proof. When I told him that I had him on camera, I saw his eyes quickly look up and then closed out of frustration, like he forgot that the camera was there. When I also mentioned that he knew what my signature looked like after hanging out around me enough lately, and I could tell his handwriting as well. He only laughed and said that he did sign the HOA papers out of spite. He was still pissed about Rachel wanting to be with me and not him, and thought that this would be a pretty good form of revenge. Little did he know that I had my phone recording in my pocket the entire time, sealing his fate quickly. I took him to court, eventually getting out of the hold the HOA Angie had on me and suing Andrew for fraud. The judge seemed pretty surprised at the entire ordeal, and when my lawyer mentioned that this was all over a girl, he actually looked at Andrew and asked if he was serious and if he thought it was worth it. He got slapped with a heavy fine for taking mail out of my mailbox, and the judge said that he was letting him off easy. That same month, I took the HOA to court for harassment and to have them take the lien off of my house, something that they had done recently. The judge agreed quickly, especially after reviewing my case against Andrew. The HOA queen was not quite as self-controlled as Andrew was though, even getting herself kicked out of the little courtroom after she was heard calling the judge a blind pig-faced idiot under her breath. At the end of the day, I got away with around $26,000 after my lawyer fees. It was a nice chunk of change, but I cannot help but think that it was also really stupid that we had to do this at all. Andrew continued to be a jealous little girl and would watch me whenever I had friends over again. Rachel and I continued to be together, and we are even engaged right now. We threw a huge engagement party at my place and put up wild decorations and cars parked up and down the street. I knew the HOA would love that, and I left them up for like a week. I even tied balloons to Andrew's mailbox just to rub it in his face. My trash cans were full after I finally cleaned everything up, so I decided to use his. There may have been some junk that made its way over to his yard as well. It was just the wind, I swear. Eventually, Andrew moved instead of just apologizing and trying to be my friend again. A couple moved in and we seem to get along pretty well so far. As long as they don't try to sign me up for the HOA, we should be fine. And yeah, ripe stars, if you still enjoy the stories about entitled people, crazy neighbors, and even more insane HOAs, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also like the video if you want to support my channel. Because, by the way, recently it seems that likes have gotten even more important on YouTube, especially with the removal of the dislike button. So therefore, thank you very much for the support. The next one is titled, Free Rent is Awesome. So, a friend and I moved into this newly renovated apartment in Brooklyn. Brooklyn. Well, I cannot say it like the true New Yorkers. Anyway, it is nice enough, but just about every one of the 14 units has some sort of weird problem. Damn, there we got the Brooklyn B again. Anyway, one unit had the hot and cold water mixed up, flush a few times and get a heated toilet. One unit, none of the outlets are grounded. One unit, there are gaps around the windows. The problem in our unit was a leak in the air conditioner lines. The leak was probably at the roof, but we ended up with no AC. We call them and it takes a month to get someone. He refills the lines and a week later, the problem comes back. We spent the summer getting the system topped up every week. At the end of the summer, they decided that our repairs and all of the neighbors were getting too expensive. So they sent us bills. Our bill was in the tens of thousands of dollars. Recharging that system weekly must have been expensive. They also start trying to charge every unit for any infraction, like $100 for every unit for a single scrap of paper found in a hall. The tenants all get together to have a nice little meeting. It turns out that they never got a certificate of occupancy for the building. The city had it on the books as a furniture warehouse. So collectively, we all just stopped paying them. Rent, fines, fees, nothing. We retain a lawyer and just live there. The company tried to get us out by cutting lighting and other services. We contacted the lawyer, the company would get fined and we would get our lights back. They tried to change the main lock once, but we let the locksmith know what was going on, so he stopped. They did not try it a second time. The first floor of the building was an off-track betting parlor. They were particularly noisy and obnoxious, so one resident called the health department over a moldy loaf of bread we found in the basement. One of my best memories was watching a bunch of guys in hazmat suits clear out the betting parlor so they could run tests. Eventually, they tried to get the certs, but to do that, they need to do inspections with the drywall removed. They tried to do it while we lived there, and the lawyer fought it for not being in a livable state. Finally, they realized they needed us out. If they got the C of O while we were still there, we would owe back rent. They take us to court to get evictions. Lawyer gets everything pushed back as far as he can, but finally we go to city court. Lawyer points out that they are trying to evict 14 units, but you cannot evict more than 10 at a time. Court ejects the case. I don't think their lawyer gets a single word in. So now we get a county court date for an ejection instead of an eviction. Again, lawyer pushes it out as much as he can, but eventually we go. Court agrees to eject us all, but he sees the evidence of lighting and lock tampering. Then asks our lawyer what would be a reasonable time frame. Lawyer asks for 4 months. Judge gives us 6. Everyone stays until the last month. At the end of it all, we got to live in a newly renovated apartment in a trendy area of Brooklyn for free for a little over a year. Brooklyn, Brooklyn, Brooklyn. I cannot stop it. Anyway, guys, let's continue with the next one. And the next one is titled, Business Owner Loses Everything. My friend inherited his parents' house a few years back and has been slowly renovating it. The house is nothing special and not in the best area, but it is his. No banks, no mortgage. It also happens to be next door to a restaurant. The restaurant had been a neighborhood fixture for decades but has slowly declined with the neighborhood. Cue the old owners walking away and selling it to a real sleazeball. New owner wants to buy my friend's house to demo it so he can expand the restaurant's parking lot. Instead of offering a fair price, sleazeball tries to lowball my friend, assuming he does not know the property's potential value. Sleazeball gets offended when my friend counters with fair market value and begins to bully him with passive-aggressive BS. Like delivery trucks blocking his sidewalk, new super bright security lights that shine into the house, etc. And on top of that, sleazeball is openly racist and refers to my friend as all sorts of epithets. Sleazeball even tries to turn the neighbors against my friend by telling them that he's a drunk, has anger issues, etc. All the while Sleazeball is doing major renovations/expansions to his restaurant. The revenge? My friend does contracting work for the city and is on a first-name basis with the local boards. It turns out Sleazeball did not file for the proper permits. After an anonymous report to the inspectors, he is ordered to demolish the new expansion. You would think that would be it, but oh no, the restaurant has not been properly inspected for years and the city orders further inspections. Another anonymous report stated that the restaurant was unsanitary. No surprise, it fails the health and safety inspection and is condemned as structurally deficient. Between the fines, repair costs and loss of business, the owner files for bankruptcy and the old restaurant is demolished. The next one is titled, I Got Revenge on My Roommate. In college, lease was up on an apartment I shared with another student. I had a vacation the second before move out, and he was going on vacation and moving out before I got back from vacation. So we planned and agreed to what each of us was responsible for cleaning before I left on my vacation. However, when I got home and he was already gone, I saw he had used my dishes to cook and eat, but he did not even wash them. He cleaned his part of the apartment and took his own dishes, but he left a gross mess of rotting food on my dishes. No note or apology or anything, just a little FU on the way out of the door. The incredible thing was, he did not even finish moving his own stuff, but we had to be out before he would return from his vacation. It was pretty incredible because he left two of the things most valuable to him. One was an heirloom painting from his grandma, and the other one was a collection of herbs he had been growing for years. Looking at all the containers that comprised his garden, I realized I had a few choices. Here are those choices in order of least work for me to most work. Number 1, take them to the next door neighbor who we were friends with for that friend to keep for a week. Number 2, make multiple trips down the hall, down the stairs, past the parking area, past the next building, and then toss them one by one into the commercial garbage bin. Number 3, make a special moving trip or two just for those herbs to carefully transport them to my new place and then unload them and care for them for another week until he got back. Number 3 was out of the question, number 2 was a lot more work over 1, but this is the petty revenge sub after all. When he returned and heard from mutual friends that I dumped his prized garden, he apparently got quite upset. Oops. Our friends set a date and time to meet at my place and they came with him because they were afraid it would turn into a fight. Double oops. I did not give a damn, was not afraid of him to begin with, and I still had his grandma's painting. Anyway, he comes over and starts yelling at me about how much his herb garden was worth, etc. I said that's his problem, he should have cleaned my dishes after using them and should not have left food out in the summer when he knew I would not return for a few days. He was a little embarrassed when our friends looked at him like, what a dick move. Still mad, but now more whining than yelling, I told him to wait a moment. I went to the back room and brought out his grandma's painting. Everyone knew about that painting, so they were shocked that 1, he pulled that a-hole move, and number 2, left his whole garden, and 3, left that painting. Giving him the painting, I told him he is lucky I saved that painting and the loss of the herbs was a good lesson for him. He was ticked off again, triple oops. We went to the same college in a small town, so although I never hung out with him again, I heard about him from friends every now and then. For the next 2 years I heard every once in a while that he was still pissed off because it cost him hundreds of dollars and many months to replace that garden. And the next one is titled, There Goes the Neighborhood. A fun story for you all. When I was young, high school age, I lived with my family in a middle upper class suburb. Everybody in the community got along and for the most part life there was quiet, peaceful and enjoyable. That is of course for one major exception of the house next to mine, which was rented by Mr. Public Nuisance. $PN. Be it drug or alcohol-fueled parties, drug busts and constant eviction notices, there was rarely more than a week that went by without some sort of police involvement. To put him into perspective, he would have failed to get a job being a dirtbag simply because he was overqualified. One fateful night, however, the neighborhood got even. It was about 11 PM on a spring night. Myself and family are attempting to sleep, however, the party bumping from the other side of the fence is making sleep or even clear thought all but impossible. Police had already been called, volumes had been turned down and then turned back up again as soon as the police car had pulled around the corner. I crawled out of bed and made my way out to the living room. The front door was open and my father was standing out front in conference with the neighborhood pajama committee. They dispersed and my father came back inside. I asked him what was happening. Just be quiet and follow me. I followed my father out of the house into the backyard where he opened up the valves for our hoses. They bulged under the pressure. He handed me one of the nozzles and whispered, "On my command." We both walked over to the fence and took aim. My father waited, checking his watch until finally his arm dropped. Streams of water appeared from all around and jettisoned into PN's yard. Sounds of drunken partying turned to screams of shock. Now would probably be a good time to note that the neighborhood water supply was winter runoff, which usually sat just above freezing temperatures. In the cool spring air, it was probably quite uncomfortable. Screams of shock were eventually overpowered by a yell of rage. PN had lost it and was screaming half-slurred expletives. We shut the water off and somebody yelled back, "Sorry, thought it was the dog." A few minutes later, the neighborhood pajama committee had recommuned and were giggling among each other. PN was standing in the nude in front of his house, continuing to yell at the top of his lungs. At that moment, a police car pulled around the corner. Long story short, PN was taken to jail on charges of providing alcohol to minors, indecent exposure, lewd acts with a girl under the age of 18, and a slew of other alcohol and drug charges. He pled guilty to many of the charges and evaded jail time. However, because he now had a record of sexual assault, he was forced to move away from our community and the many schools that were nearby. Now, who is playing today? Who's playing? Not the air conditioner, Disney. And jump, 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 jump. I like how the cats jump. And sometimes the way they look at you, like when they almost looks like they figure out that you're just fooling them. Oh, wow, it's difficult to even film her. Okay, I guess I will use 0.5 on the camera. Whee! She's so quick. Genuinely hard to catch on the camera. Disney. Such a fluff ball, this kid. Such a fluff ball. Right, Disney. Who's the little fluffy cuddle monster house cat? That is Disney. Fluffy cuddle monster house cat. Actually, her full name should be Little Fluffy Disney Cuddle Monster House Cat. Very difficult to say these names. And even more toys. Oi! Damn, someone is active today. I'm not sure if I can record with her in the same room today. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.